Now, today I want to talk about Simon Ekpa. People has been texting me. People has been asking me to talk about Simon Ekpa. Who is Simon Ekpa? He's a Nigerian Finnish citizen. He's a Nigerian and a Finland citizen. Okay, although he says he's not a Nigerian, he's a Biafran. Okay, and I called him that. He's a Biafran Finnish citizen. He was a military personnel, Finnish military personnel, and he was a politician. Okay, a politician of. I think his position was in Nigeria they call it senator. Okay, I think in Ghana they call it MP. Okay, that was his member of parliament. That was his position. He was a very top politician in Finland. Okay, but he's an Igbo man. Okay, he's an Igbo man, and he's been facing terrorism charges. Okay, by Nigeria. Nigeria alleged. Okay, by Nigeria. Okay, he's been facing terrorism charges in Finland from the allegation of Nigeria. Okay, now today we want to look into his case. Okay, to find out if those things that Nigerian government has alleged are true or not. Okay, because we've seen so many cases, the cases of even the case of Mazen Nandekano, okay, and all that. Okay, so in Nigeria you are being prosecuted on the basics of your ethnicity. One is once you're Igbo, you're an endangered tribe in Nigeria. That's one. And once you're a Christian as well, you're also an endangered faith. Okay, you're also an endangered person in Nigeria. Okay, so people are prosecuted on this basis. Okay, so let's look into the account of Simon Ekpa. Before he left Nigeria, they said he was an athlete. He was a very successful athlete, okay, a good one for that matter, okay. And according to the story, they said he sustained injury and the Nigerian government abandoned him, okay, and all that. Okay, people say that is the reason why he's angry, he's pained and all that, okay. But this is something we see happen in Nigeria. This is something we see happen in Africa. Okay, you find out the athletes like footballers and all that. These are the things they go through. Okay, when they sustain injury, you find out that the country abandons them, and so it happens in Africa. Okay, this is one thing we face. Okay, so now, while we proceed, whether Simon Ekpa is guilty of the terrorism charges levied against him or not, I will want us to read the article, an article. Okay, let me bring an article to you. Here says, my international legal intervention on the cases of Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa. My good international legal intervention in both the Finnish and the Nigerian cases involving Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa is to put one fundamental question to President Alexander Stubb of Finland and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria. If a former Attorney General of Nigeria, Abubakar Malami, who was involved in the Nigerian government's counter-terrorism policy and the prosecution of terrorism-related cases, was himself later accused of offenses relating to terrorism, financing, or failure to prosecute suspected financiers. Listening to that again, was himself, okay, listen to that again. Abubakar Malami, who was involved in the Nigerian government's counter-terrorism policy and the prosecution of terrorism-related cases, was himself later accused of offenses relating to terrorism financing or failure to prosecute suspected financiers, then this raises legitimate questions about consistency, accountability, equal application of the law, and the principles of justice. How can the same laws be applied to individuals in such circumstances, particularly when one person, Nnamdi Kanu, was brought to Nigeria under highly controversial circumstances, while another, Simon Ekpa, was arrested and prosecuted in Finland? My intervention is not to prejudge the guilt or innocence of anyone. It is to ask whether international law, due process, fairness, and equal justice are being applied consistently to all persons, regardless of their political status or the government involved. Justice must be blind. The law must be applied equally. Dr. David Nyekorach Masanga, peace advocate and international legal affairs commentator. Dr. David Masanga. Okay, this is the article he wrote. I picked it up on X. Okay, now, Did you hear that? Who is Abubakar Malami? He is the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the Minister of Justice, and the Attorney General of the Federation. The Attorney General of Nigeria Federation. He's undergoing terrorism charges in Nigeria, ranging from financing terrorism or failure to prosecute terrorist financiers. Did you just hear that? In one of the cases, he met Sowore in court. He's undergoing terrorism charges in Nigeria. The person who made sure that Nnamdi Kanu is brought to Nigeria and kept behind bars. The person who made sure that Simon Ekpa is arrested and prosecuted and kept behind bars in Finland. He's undergoing terrorism charges. He's facing terrorism charges in Nigeria. The person who accused Nnamdi Kanu of terrorism charges, of being a terrorist, the person who accused Simon Ekpa of being a terrorist. Did you just hear that? Okay. Now, Abubakar Malami served from 2015 to 2023. Okay. Now, he was the one, the Onitsha killings. The Onitsha killings, he was the one. He was on seat when it happened in 2015. Also in 2016, he was there. The Mpo massacre, he was on seat when all these things went on in 2016. The Aba massacre, he was on seat. He was the Chief Justice of Nigeria when the Aba massacre occurred in 2016. In 2017, the killings of the Obibo massacre, he was there and all that. Those killings that occurred from that time when Muhammadu Buhari was on seat, which of course we've seen, he's been indicted sponsoring terrorism in Igbo land when he was a president and all that, using a Bubago and the southeastern governors. We've seen all these things. Abubakar Malami was the one on seat. He was the one in charge. When they were trying to forcefully push Islam, push their Fulanization agenda, he was the one on seat. Now, will you say, I want to ask you a honest question, will you say that Simon Ekpa is actually guilty, or he was just a resistance to their Fulanization agenda? Can we say he is guilty, he's actually guilty as charged or as accused, or he was just a resistance that the state, that the government didn't want? Since it is clear that the government sponsors terrorism, Nigerian government sponsors terrorism, since it is clear, it is obvious, there are evidences to that. Terrorist financiers are in Nigeria's government. They serve as political leaders. So can we say that Simon Ekpa is actually guilty? Or he was just a resistance, a stumbling block that need to leave the way for them to have their way? Which of them? And if you still think he is guilty, then you don't have brain. You're very stupid. It is either you don't have brain or you're not listening to, you're not following my page. Now, finally, before I go, you will also find out that the same people who were used to paint Nnamdi Kanu black, evil, bad, to tarnish the image of Nnamdi Kanu, to pin terrorism on Nnamdi Kanu, are still the same people that were used to fight against Simon Ekpa. The same people that has been sacked by Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, the so-called criminals that has been sacked by Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, are the same people that were used to fight against Simon Ekpa, including the lawyer, the so-called lawyer, that criminal. I don't know how Mazen Nnamdi Kanu managed to make him his lawyer, because he's not competent. As a lawyer, you should be eloquent, you should be fluent, you should possess that art of oratory. He doesn't have any. Intelligence he doesn't even have. But that guy has wasted much souls in Igbo land, in Biafra land, than anybody you can ever think of. That is what happens. The same people were used. They keep petitioning Simon. They keep writing petition against Simon. until Bianca now came into the picture. It was now Bianca that did the finishing work, because it was very easy for her. Oh, the Biafra you're talking about is for my husband. My husband initiated the Biafra. This guy now that calls himself Simon Ekpa is not working for the Biafra. He's working against Biafra. He's killing the people. He's a terrorist. It is very easy. Once she says that, that is all. The Finland government will pick Simon Ekpa and put him behind bars. And of course, we know how much Nigeria pays money to lobby, to bribe all these countries out there. We know how much American firms has been lobbied, how much American firms has been paid, how much has been pushed to America and so many other countries, just to make sure the plight of the Igbos, the plight of the Biafrans are not hard. We have the Fulani woman and the deputy secretary in UN, that Fulani woman who is suppressing every information to make sure that the plight of the people of Nigeria is not hard. These are the things we know. These are the things we see. So in all these things, do you still think Simon Ekpa is guilty? Or he was just a resistance that they needed him, that they needed to leave the way for them to actualize their real terrorism bid? So which one do you think? Your guess is as good as mine for those who has good brains. See you in my next episode.